and welcome to the January 15th edition of Beyond the Headlines. Thank you so very much for joining us from your living rooms, from the bars, on the road, via GBN television, our radio network, or any of the social media platforms. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be hosting this evening's program, and we're going to be getting a varied perspective from our opposition leader, Dr. Keith Mitchell. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Prime Minister.
and he pleasantly whispers to me, former Prime Minister. So I'll give him all of the time.
23 years.
Dr. Mitchell, welcome to this program, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to have a conversation with you on Beyond the Headlines.
Well, certainly, Colin, this is a pleasure. And of course, I welcome the opportunity to speak to the audience or the length and breadth of the country. And I know that nowadays when you're speaking, you're really speaking to the whole wide world.
That's correct. That's correct.
So in fact, we have to talk about outside there. And so we have to conduct ourselves accordingly.
Absolutely.
And so it's a pleasure to be here and look forward to this intercourse this afternoon.
And, you know, as I was reflecting on our conversation, Dr. Mitchell, I recognize that this year, 2024, is 40 years that Dr. Keith Mitchell has been a member of Grenada's Parliament. Congratulations on that, because that is no easy feat.
That's a lifetime.
Well, a number of probably of our audience members don't even know what 40 years look like.
That's right. That's exactly true.
And, you know, I will deliberately start this program the same way I started last week's and just ask you to reflect a bit. As you look over your time as a member of Parliament and therefore effectively at the helm of Grenada's political leadership, what are three things you would identify that you're most proud of accomplishing during that time?
I would say the first one would be the fact that I have been involved that long, particularly from my constituency representation level, and of course the amount of times the people of Grenada that have endorsed my leadership to me must be a major plus for me. And I put it down to the fact that I've kept a sense of humility, and I don't think anyone can say that Keith Mitchell see me as an enemy as such. So that, and seriously, Colin, I'm proud of the fact that whether I'm in government or in opposition, I walk the streets of Grenada and I get love. You get people who do not support you, and they will tell you so. But I don't get any hostility. And I think that to me has to be a major plus for me. So I would say that. Right. Number two, I would say my involvement in the development of the human resources in the country, the educational development of our society, because I know I would not be sitting here with you if I did not get an opportunity for an education, because knowing where we came from as a family, the poverty level in Brazan, Busheju, and Happy Hill, we didn't have the resources to be able to go to secondary school without serious support from people in general. So I think that I always feel I have a major obligation to see that children that from disadvantaged homes who wish to have an education, knowing that that will help them to develop and to have a lifestyle that they wish to have, I feel I have a fundamental responsibility to ensure that this happens. And I feel a sense of guilt that any time somebody comes in front of me and say, I want help, and sometimes it's beyond our reach, and I have to say, well, I can't do this, but I can try and see how I can do this. And you know it from the St. George University, I've been a constant beggar for not myself, for people, poverty people.
You put it down as a appeal.
Yes. I feel that to me is another one. I think another major achievement is my involvement in the infrastructural development of the country. I think that's key. A lot of people don't know the stories about the rural electrification, moving the country in 1984 from 45% coverage in the island to 97% within 4.5 years as Minister of Works and Public Utilities. The distribution of water system throughout the country. The question of the new telephone system. I traveled to the United States, to Canada, and to other parts of Europe, Britain, seeking help to develop because the PRG had invested in a crossbar system. That time this thing gone out of existence. So we made a set of equipment which was of no use in the 21st century. And I remember and said, this is the digital age. And therefore we wanted to ensure that we have. So we were the first country in the region that involved ourselves with a digital telephone system going forward because of what Grenada did. So I consider infrastructure as a major achievement going forward. And as I mentioned, education, and I mentioned the human touch that I felt that I kept. And I always advise every single member of my team, the one thing you cannot afford to do as a government person is to lose your sense of humility. Because I always remember the story that when you're going up the ladder, remember one day you will be coming down. and therefore the person you treat badly going up, look out, they will deal with you according. That has never left me. So I would say there are a number of other things, but I certainly would place these three at the top.
Sorry, now the opportunity to serve is what I heard.
Yes.
The opportunity through leadership.
Yes.
The opportunity to serve through assisting to uplift through education, and thirdly,
particularly the children who come from the disadvantaged part of the society. That aspect is important.
And thirdly, for those of us who are around, we know the work that was done as Minister of Works and Public Utilities. I remember Festival of Lights
in Munich. Yes,
in Munich.
That was the first village that got electricity. Yes,
right.
In fact.
If you are to now reflect on two things that you wished that you would have done differently, what would they be?
Well, let's face it. I recall my first entry into the politics, and the period when the transition for the NNP leadership, and the whole disagreement with Mr. Blaze going forward, and I had to end up opposing him in a convention. That was not something that I enjoyed at all. It was just no choice. If people know the story which I'm now writing, they will understand that was a most uncomfortable time for me. So I would say that, put that down. I wish there was a way in which we could have solved this thing and not have to go, because I remember going to Mr. Blaze and said, look, make Ben Jones the leader and I will support him, and that never happened. So it was not a good time for me. It was one of the most unhappy time as far as I'm concerned. I would say also, if you were looking at another aspect, let's face it, when you coming from university life, you're in the classroom, you're in charge. and getting into politics, I took on some fights that I wish I never did, because you're not used to people telling lies on you, and therefore you react. And sometimes, people sometimes call me and say to me, you have to realize this is politics. You should know what you're getting into, so do not react. So I think some outbursts publicly and otherwise in the initial period, I thought, and that's why I could counsel the younger ones getting in politics, don't make that mistakes, because it can help hurt you and get people to see you in a different light. That we should. I would say these are the two things. There are a number of other things we can in terms of things, the decision that you took, or in retrospect, you would wish that you didn't do if you had more information going forward. So certainly there are a number of issues like that.
And the third aspect is from the body of work in moving forward, because you remain leader of the opposition. You are a political leader of the New National Party.
Yeah.
So what lesson from the past would you take in order to influence your governance and leadership roles moving forward?
Well, I think the first thing, we lost an election that we should not have lost. That's a fact. I believe I think it's more NNP losing the election than NDC winning an election. And therefore we have to take fundamental blame for that loss, and as leader I can't take responsibility. But of course other persons played a role in that loss. So I would say definitely going forward, told the party, listen, we have to put structures in place. The organization was weak. We took a lot for granted. We are accustomed winning 15 seats, so we'll win again. Some of us are saying, we didn't have to do any work, man. We took a lot for granted. And I would say that that must be an important factor going forward. And some people talking about, let's go to convention. Convention, after losing an election, your priority is convention and not the organization. Organization first and priority, as a priority, putting system in place, making sure that we generate more support at the village levels, which is what we're doing right now.
Let me ask you this, because I was going to come to the party issues later, but seeing that you've raised it, is that the approach, or is that the advised approach, or would one have wanted to have a convention, probably have some change of personnel to ensure when you hit the ground, you have people who are energized and have the capacity to rejuvenate?
That is a medicine for total disaster, from my own experience. Because when you go to a convention, if your organization is not in place, what are you electing? What are you electing? You lost the election because you were not on the ground. So you have to put the organization in place. And then every other decision, I'm not only talking about convention, there could be other decision that you have to make. But that must be the priority.
Okay.
And my experience, Colin, remember 1990, that was the worst defeat. Remember, I always say we won 1.5 seats because we won Northwest St. George's, we won Victoria, and some things happened after that. So I always say it's a half seat we won. And that was, we won only 6,000 votes in the entire country. And over 2,000 of them votes came from Northwest St. George's. And the only other places we got some significant vote was St. John's with Grace Duncan and so on. And of course St. Mark's.
Right.
The rest of the country was about 2,000 votes we got. So how we managed to, and you had in fact a number of experienced hands in the NDC in government at the time, the George Brizan, Francis Alexis, a number of members who could hold their own, not like now where I'm not young persons who are inexperienced persons in government. And I remember how we went about organizing the party from village to village, and I remember one gentleman came down to my home about 3-4 weeks. He died now a couple of years ago, from St. Andrews, and the man come to my home, and I still facing the emotional problems over this massive defeat, not just defeat. I felt sorry for myself. I always tell people, listen the election result, that night, I felt sorry for me because the numbers in the village sound like bingo. Right. So you say
the election tabanka was still right, and he comes to you.
The man come to me and say, Doc, we need to start walking on the ground. I said, man, you crazy? You see the amount of licks we get? Then he explained, well, look, we have to start. And wise old man. And we went out village to village. These guys were going out in villages with me. They were not working. They had no income, how they were living. Now and then I find a few dollars to give them by myself. But it was a rough time politically. So I know that organization within 5 years, remember? We came from 1.5 seat to 8. We beat literally a pretty organized and well-funded and human resource in the human resource area, men would had a lot of experience in government. We beat them because of the organization. So I'm talking from experience. The other way around would be total. You go to a convention and you do not put, you just people in position, but you have no organization. Okay. You are in trouble.
Are we ready to see a convention in 2024?
I cannot speak by myself for this. I certainly would like to see a convention as soon as possible. But the executive of the party will make a decision on convention.
Okay.
That's what it has always been. Keith Mitchell is not the one. I have my views, but I am the executive of the party will certainly determine when it's totally ready for it to have a convention going forward.
Okay. There's a lot of speculation about the country, as you very well know. So I will call some names and ask you to react. In terms of the political leadership, not necessarily political leader, but political leadership of the New National Party. Gregory Boeing.
No, well, Gregory has always been a stalwart member of the New National Party, and as you know, he has served this party. To me, if this individual has made more sacrifices to Grenada, probably second only to myself, knowing where I was before in Washington. And he's, as you know, is a brilliant person. I taught him mathematics at Presentation College, and I could tell you his level of intellect. And when he went to university, tear away in physics and mathematics. So I'm talking about somebody I have a tremendous respect for, and his integrity as a person. So I have no doubt that Gregory would have been good, but the fact is he has lost elections in his constituency. So the chances of emerging as leader, having lost twice, is not very high. And I think Gregory has expressed, just like myself, that we have to look at the future of the party and the future of our role. So I think that's what I would say. But this has been my closest friend. It was not just a supporter. Gregory has been a friend, and his family has been very close to me.
Okay, I'll go again. Let's go to a winner of elections, Dr. Clarice Modeste.
Well, Clarice is like a lot of members. She's again a wonderful person, and so on. And of course, Clarice has made a contribution. But like Gregory and myself, we all accept the fact that we're given most of our life to politics. We are literally given up a profession. So I think I'm quite convinced that Clarice is more seriously interested in the transition process for the New National Party, and not necessarily herself.
Okay.
Being
a younger member, also a winner, Emmeline Pear.
Oh, I believe Emmeline, to me, the biggest growth I've seen in a politician over the last several years of being in the New National Party is Emmeline Pear. When Emmeline came in initially, I think she was very much afraid of politics. I think we literally forced her into it. But I think she has grown, she has matured in many ways, and I think she is the most organized member, including myself, or the executive level of the New National Party. And I think organization has to be a critical factor in leadership. So I certainly believe Emmeline has to stand tall as far as that area is concerned. I genuinely believe she will do well. And I think the country is saying over and over, time for a woman. I hear the story, people call me and say, Doc, time, you need to get a woman. Does it not mean or get nobody? so I think Emmeline has done well as a person.
You mentioned females, so let's go there. We heard rumblings of Akima Paul Lambert.
Well, Akima, I believe would have been a good choice in many ways and so on. But Akima, I think politics is a frightening thing for a lot of people. That's my observation. And people, you have to be prepared for battle in many ways. And some people just don't feel that given the state where they are in professionally, and of course, I'm only speaking from my observation now, not something somebody said to me. But I think she's a wonderful human being and a success story. I remember, Colin, when I came, I won the Island Scholarship. and she was probably the #1 student in the region, academically and so on. They were at this ceremony in Jamaica, and Prime Minister Owen Arthur was chairman of CARICOM, and the chairman usually have to be there. And he came back home and he called me and said, "Boy, keep more. Man, you can't get this woman, man." He said, "This girl is good, man." You know, she is a star in many respects. And what is another aspect of Akima was the fact come from humble beginning and has always shown her ability to care for people. And that to me is a fundamental aspect. And that's the way I give Emmeline a lot of credit. She loves people. In fact, I think she cares about people more than herself. That's my observation. And so I think Akima would be, but it doesn't seem that she has that stamina to fight it out. Okay. It's not an easy place, political.
Understood. Let's go another fresh face. I would put Dwight Horsford.
No, Dwight has been there with the New National Party, and one of the roughest days, 1990, that I mentioned, and when we lost in 2008, and many men disappear. People disappear. You think NNP has a problem? No, we have no problem now. 2008 was the worst. The general secretary resigned. The vice chairman said he wanted to have nothing to do with NNP again, and a lot of members made all kinds of excuses. We went from 28 members in the executive to 8 in the first meeting we had. Men disappear. We didn't have that situation this time. So clearly, Dwight is somebody who has a lot of skills. He's a bright young man. I've worked with him, and I certainly believe he will be a tremendous asset to the New National Party going forward.
Okay. One who has not necessarily been a part of the party, to my knowledge, or certainly the government structure, Derek Sylvester.
Well, Derek clearly, well, he has taken a position now, so I think Derek had an interest, but I think clearly maybe again the politics is a place where, as I said before, you have to tighten your belly, so to speak, when you're coming in. So I think Derek may have had second thoughts about actual political involvement at this time. So I think he spoke to me when he decided to accept the position as a judge going forward. So I think it's, he's a good friend of mine. So therefore I certainly believe he's a person that has done well. Colin, I always admire people who come from background where they literally had nothing. And they can walk on the road, to help send himself to school. So people like that, I always feel a sense of closeness to. So somebody I like personally, but at this point in time, I don't think politics is a priority for him, as he has indicated.
Okay. Let me come back within party, a long-standing member, Roland Bowler.
Roland is a wonderful human being. Is one of the persons in the party that everybody seemed to like. In fact, one day I said, "Bowler, you know something? When you're in politics, everybody can't like you. But everybody seems to like you. What's happening?" He said, "Doc, what's wrong with that?" I said, "Because there's some position you have to take that will hurt your own brother." Right. But he has that personality. He's a very wonderful human being. But of course, Bola has never expressed interest in leadership of the party or anything like that. And he's playing a very good, responsible role as General Secretary. He's a good man.
Okay. Speaking of express interest in the party, then we go Honorable Peter David.
Yeah, well, Peter, I have said to Peter, I have said to the team, anyone that is involved in political life and, for example, is an elected person, particularly so, and do not one day wish to be a leader, you are not going to be the best representative or best political person. It's good to have ambition, and there's nothing wrong with that. I always challenge everybody to say, it is not the ambition and the need the wanting to have a position. It's how you do it. So I think that is precisely what I have done, told all the members of our party going forward. If and when I decide to demit the political leadership position, I certainly would want to see persons who reaches to the top, the people that understand the process and who understand not the position that you have to worry about more. You have to more worry about what you're going to do for the people that rely on you and your service to be able to improve their lives. So
I notice you say when you decided to demit, would Dr. Mitchell be on the slate of candidates for political leader at the next convention, whenever that happens?
I have already said that to my members, that when I see the time is right, I will certainly be taking a position accordingly. But I did say so about the last election because I expected that we will win. In fact, probably if we had won, this session we have in there might have been an item saying the date, exact date I'm going. But as serious pundits in the politics in the region have said to me, boy, it's much easier to have a transition to leadership when you are in power than when you're in opposition. And therefore we are working through the process that one day that decision will be made. But as I said to my friends and something, you don't have to worry. There's some people feel I should be there forever. No, I said, listen, as long as I have life and I have physical wellness and so on, that I am going to play a role in the development of my party and my countries. So whether I'm in an exact position, that should not be the key factor. I've given, as you just said, 40 years of my life and so on. And so I would say the time will come when we'll do what we have to do.
Let me issue a challenge here, because as you opened up, you did say one of the things you regretted on reflection was having to, quote unquote, wrestle political leadership from former Prime Minister.
Yes.
Would you take that lesson and avoid a situation where someone is attempting to wrestle the National Party from Dr. Mitchell?
Well, it's very difficult to wrest leadership from Dr. Mitchell. I mean, I'm not arrogant in saying this. I believe the way I've conducted myself, that the members of my party know they don't have to force me out. That is a decision that's easy to be made. If and when members feel that that my period of service should end, I'll be happy to do so. But I think the general leadership of the party, the advice is we should do so at the time when we prepare the party appropriately for the future, and that will come. So the work
how is the preparation going, though? Because, it's what, elections was in 2022, June of 2022.
Yes.
You have been known to call early elections.
Yes.
So if there's an early election, we mean in 2 years' time, there probably can be a call or at least a movement towards elections.
They could have one this year. If you have one this year, we might have to make some interim decision. So we might have plans now about how we proceeded, but if something happens with the governance of the country, the party has to come forward. And there may be some changes in our approach or decision.
And I'm asking just in terms of your own timelines, as you envision this transition process. Let's assuming a 5-year period, so 2027. When would you like to have that transition take place to ensure, if there's a transition, to ensure that the party is ready, battle ready, to go into the next elections?
Well, as I said before, I with my experience and with the members of the team, they will ensure whatever decision is made will be made in time to ensure that the party is not marginalized going forward.
Okay.
So I think we'll be measuring the temperature on the ground politically. So we'll have a good. Look, the NDC made a decision just a year before election,
right,
with a new leader and in government.
Right.
We don't believe in that philosophy. So when I was planning the last election, and I was thinking of my own future going forward, I would never have waited for the third or fourth year to demit. I would never have done that because I think that would not be fair to the new leader going forward.
Okay. A question off the cuff. Do you miss being Prime Minister? Do you miss being Prime Minister?
No, not really. Let me tell you. This is the second time that I've been Prime Minister and out of government. So, in other words, I have gone through the mill before. And you know, Colin, that first time, it was easier to deal with because there was genuine competition. It appears that we could have lost.
Right.
So I was more prepared psychologically. But you know, I remember one day a young man came to my home looking for help, and I was no longer Prime Minister. And I couldn't help him. And when he left, a little tear came to me. And you know what said to me? Had I been in government, I would not have to turn that young man away. So the only thing that the Prime Minister office and being in office in government, not even Prime Minister, when I was Minister, I had the responsibility and I was able to do certain things. The loss of that loses the influence to be able to help people. That is what I miss, nothing more. In terms of me, people meet me now and they say, well, Doc, you're looking younger than ever before. I'm resting and I'm exercising. I spend almost an hour and a half every day running on the treadmill and doing exercise. As you know, that's me, because as a sports person, enthusiast myself. So I don't miss it. After 23 years, Colin, 23 years is almost a lifetime in many respects. I have to feel a sense of a pride and honor that the people of your country gave you an opportunity to lead them for 23 years, and you, if they say time for you to go, you want to get vexed or to be unhappy, so you don't know one day it had to end? No. This time, it took me by surprise.
Right.
We honestly did not expect to lose. So it took a little more time to get used to that change, because it was not as psychologically prepared for that loss as we were in 2008. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And it seems as though it's time for our first break. So viewers, we'll be back, and we're dealing with certain sectors as it relates to Grenada's economy when we return. Thank you for joining us. Chat soon.
But when you need someone to help you to your feet, I'll be that beacon to your highest peak. Oh, I'll be right next to you, no, I will never leave. Come on, take my hands, we got everything we need. Cause you can look to me, yes, I can. Whenever you're in need, yes, you can. Just call on me and I'll be on my way. I'll be by your side, never to divide. The light that shines our way. Wherever you road leads, we'll make your dreams come true. Next time, next time, next time, next to you.
Nexa Credit Union, with you wherever your road leads.
Get ready to mark a historic milestone. It's the 50th anniversary of Independence Gala Cocktail and Dance, Saturday, 3rd February 2024 at the Crown Ballroom Radisson, starting at 7 p.m. for the all-inclusive cost of $500. All proceeds go towards the restoration of Government House. Secure your tickets now and be a part of history. Be there at the Radisson on February 3rd, 2024, hosted by Governor General Dame Cecile Lagranade.
Tickets available at Grenadian Optical, Melville Street and Grand Anse, the 50th Anniversary Independence Committee Secretariat on the Carenage, and online at gotofet.com.
Your new Grenlec bill is even easier to read and still has all the valuable information you need to track and manage your usage.
Hey Mom, okay, your friendly tech support is here. So you got the new Grenlec bill? Let's take a look. The new bill makes it even easier to see your bill total, the due date, and much more. And take a closer look. It actually is a lot easier to understand. Let me show you. You can still see exactly what the charges are for, but in a great new format, it even shows how the cost of generating and delivering the electricity to you is calculated using your actual usage. And Mom, let Lucy know she can check out Grenlec's new Understanding Your Bill video. Anyway, look who says hi, and see you soon.
Your new Grenlec bill, easier to understand and easier to track your usage.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines, and of course with me is the Leader of His Majesty's Opposition, Honorable Dr. Keith Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell, let's get into some sectoral matters now. We heard Prime Minister Mitchell's first budget, and I use this quote, so I definitely use it. Transforming our healthcare system is the single most important priority for this administration. Do you agree?
Well, all I can say, Colin, this government goes at words and statements that sound nice, but we have not seen actions. And this business is not what you say, and the nice words you use is what you do. And I think this government has to come to terms that right now they have to start to do something instead of talking and believe the PR and the social media platforms are the way to go. That is when you're in opposition and somebody else in government. Now you have to deliver. And therefore, I honestly believe that it was mean nothing, because nothing about this government has been any form of transformation.
Let's just speak of healthcare.
Yes.
And just your sense of, if we are to prioritize healthcare, where should we begin? Because we can't sidestep the importance, I don't think, of healthcare.
Well, we certainly won't begin with trying to build a new hospital. Mm-hmm. That's not, the building means nothing. So we have a facility, but you have problems, and you know, healthcare, Colin, let's accept this, and I think I want to admit that first. Almost every country in the world, the issue of healthcare is always an issue that governments in office get enough licks on, because that's, you're talking life, people's life, so people are concerned. So I'm not here going to say that when we were in government there were no problem in healthcare. Clearly there were. Challenges were enormous and so on. But make the point about the first thing you have to ensure that you have to have a motivated staff of persons who feel that they've been treated appropriately, they're trained appropriately, and treated appropriately. So that is a fundamental priority. So whatever issues exist, they must be dealt with. The equipment and the service that you have is also important. The whole question of the modernization of the service is also very critical. There's another critical area is, as you look at Cuba, and I went to Cuba on a few occasions, and these polyclinics around the country. So what we have in Grenada is a loaded system. Everybody run to the general hospital, even for a small cut. If the polyclinics are taken care of better, you will see less pressure on the system and less pressure on the nurses and doctors and others who are facing enormous challenges consistently over the years in dealing. So I would say, in order, financially, of course, we have invested a lot of money, and I still believe this government has put a lot of money, but you could put money and not necessarily change anything.
So would you acknowledge that the movement, last budget and again this one, to have an increase or an honorarium to nurses, $500 monthly, and in 2024 to doctors of $1,000, was a good move in keeping with what you identified as the first priority in rewarding people for the work that they make and are trying to get at least their wages to more competitive level?
No, it's okay, you can do that, but that by itself may not change the status quo. If, for example, you made a decision and you tell me that you're going to make me permanent, right? And you give me $500 and tell me that is the permanent. Don't believe that the security of the job is probably more important to these persons than the $500. I'm saying nothing is wrong with the $500. Nothing is wrong with the $1,000. But I don't believe by itself it will make the kind of changes that you expect will certainly happen. So I believe the government has to demonstrate that it puts people in charge of the health system who care about what is happening in the system as a whole and who would give the time and effort. I think they made a major mistake with the minister they had for almost 2 years. It was a major mistake. He did not have a clue of what he was doing in the healthcare system. And I believe the staff was tremendously demoralized with the kind of lack of leadership that they saw.
So you praise the reshuffle and the new appointment?
I think the decision to change minister was certainly cannot be said to be a negative one. But the question is what will happen now? I think a decision has been made with a new PS and so on, and these are positive steps, but the question therefore is what happens afterwards.
Right.
So I think the population should wait, but I believe the question of medicine is important. The ability, many people go to hospital, Colin, in different parts of the country, the Maribor, to the one in Carriacou, and the central office, and basic medication they don't have.
Why are we here though? Because we have heard stories, and this is not new, of us not meeting our obligations because we buy as a unit, OECS, and we have heard stories over the years that Grenada had defaulted on payments and therefore we had limited access to medications. So what causes this?
No, let me tell you. I remember when we got into government in 2013, Grenada could not able to access the system, the regional system to buy medication, which you get cheaper, because we had owed about $8 million. That's a fact. And you know, when we came in then, it was an empty treasury. In fact, I had to run to Trinidad to get a big loan, but to pay salaries at the end of the month. There was nothing there. But with the $8 million plus that we owed, we were able to bring back Grenada into the system by meeting our obligation. So we did meet our obligation. So I was shocked when we left government, our announcement that the reason that we have problems is because the past government owed $2 million. Well, if you order anything, you would always owe. But we are meeting the responsibility. But what is sad, Colin, is that the government itself said they made a fat treasury. So if we owed $2 million, why are you even complaining? Just pay it. We met no money in the treasury, and we had $8 million, and we did not complain. We did not make noise, because we believe when people make changes, they make changes for a reason. They realize that it's time for change in government for whatever reason, and therefore we now have to accept the responsibility. Stop complaining and complaining and complaining, and get the work done. If the government has made mistakes, then you point it out. But just going back to the past and doing nothing about why you are here, and you are brought there to change things and to make things to see improvement. So I'm saying basic medication worries me, because I know for a fact I bought the medication at a hospital for a friend about 3 or 4 months ago. And I bought more than was required, and I tell him the person to hold it there. And the next time I went, they say, well, people, they did not have, and therefore I couldn't keep it. So when I go, I had to get additional amount, and there was no problem. It tells you, and that was basic medication I'm talking. I wouldn't even say the medication what it was, but it tells me that there's a breakdown in the whole system. And as I pointed out, Colin, I'm not saying under the NMP it was perfect, far from being perfect. And I used to go to the hospital myself and watch the nurses and them work, and I felt for them and so on. So I know it's a problem in Barbados, which was, when I studied in Barbados was seen as a light of healthcare in the Caribbean. Today, the government getting licks over healthcare in Barbados. So in the United States, there's a big discussion. Healthcare, Obamacare, this and so on. And, so healthcare is always going to be a problem. But I think right now, they need to do a serious surgery.
Do you see a day when our leaders will go to the general hospital and not because they have resources be looking to fly to the US or to Cuba or elsewhere?
Well, no, if you lift your healthcare system to a certain standard, and when someone is sick, first of all, they think about getting cured. And if they have confidence in your system, they will stay there. But if they have no confidence, it might be good, but if they do not have confidence, they will not stay.
When leaders and the family of our leadership travel for healthcare, does that help in giving confidence to the population?
Well, if they do not trust themselves, I can't blame them. If no one wants to go and just die. So if I'm not comfortable with a system, while I might be in charge, but I'm not comfortable, because when you go down operation, you are not the person going to be taking care of yourself. And if you fear that the post-operative procedures are questionable, and you hear incidents of problems, then you will not take that risk. Not because you're named minister or prime minister or PS, that means you'll say, well, because of that, I must go. No, you wouldn't. I would not expect that. Okay. So we have to first lift the system, the services at the hospital, and do the necessary confidence building in the population, and I believe your leaders will stay, certainly. In Trinidad, when Prime Minister Manning, he went to Cuba. Minister Pastor Pandey also went out. I can't blame them if you do not trust with the heart operation, which is a very technical operation. Then I cannot say, I wouldn't put politics there at all.
Okay. You mentioned facilities a couple of times. Yes. And I know under your leadership, certainly within the 2013 to 22 area, there was some exploration of a new hospital, recognizing that there's only so much we can do at the present location, and if we have to move forward, we probably may need to look at another facility. Question is, why didn't it happen? What are some of the challenges that you had? And if you can share those, probably these can be lessons for this administration, who seem to be speaking quite a bit.
The previous NDC government made the decision that they were going to look for new hospital. Remember, they had big sign in St. George, new hospital coming, and I'll forget that. When we got into government, we did investigate the possibilities, and the cost factor was beyond our reach. Okay. And the feeling was the present physical facility could be upgraded and be made to reach the point that it can provide the service that is required for the healthcare system. So we did spend an enormous amount of resources in upgrading the present hospital. The other alternative and the other decision was made that we need to increase the training of the staff. We need to increase the equipment level. You see the level of CAT scan that we have brought to this country, one of the best in the region at this time. So we know that the building, Colin, is a secondary factor in hospital care. I went to the polyclinic in Cuba, and you see the small facility, but they had every equipment there. The doctors, the nurses. So it's not, some of them were out in over a tent, but all the services and equipment was there. So this thing about, let's get a new hospital, you spend about $78 million building a facility. Then you have to equip it, right? And you have to provide the necessary training to upgrade the staff necessary to meet the challenges.
But would you say that this is an investment worth pursuing?
If you have the resources. If you have the resources, clearly. But is that a priority when you have so many other areas in need of basic services and help that you are not able to deal with? And you have a facility that can cope, can give you this. All you need is to upgrade the equipment, invest more in equipment, the maintenance system, because you could buy the best equipment, as you know, Colin, and you end up with a problem. And provide the necessary atmosphere and confidence building in the system to ensure that people believe that things are happening.
You mentioned a couple of times the polyclinics in Cuba.
Yes.
And in growing up, I know the health centers, or we used to call it the surgery.
Yes.
The surgery in Manjaloo that was staffed by Nurse Francis,
in Happy Hill.
24/7, etc. Why didn't we see that movement towards polyclinics and certainly the addition of services or reinstitution of services in the health centers so that they would have relieved the pressure on the general hospital?
Yeah, I think that was clearly an intention. In fact, I remember how much we stressed the idea of improving the facility. You see the one in Guava that we've just built. We have did our best to make sure that basics of medical services were available. For example, in Happy Hill, my own area there, in fact, I almost every 2-3 weeks I used to pass this and go inside and check, just see how the nurses are doing and so on. We did attempt, but Colin, I cannot say that we succeeded. I wouldn't sit here and to give the impression that things were so rosy and nice with the things that we were able to achieve in healthcare system in the country. But I agree, if we could improve the polyclinics much more than we are able to do, we were able to do, I think it would go a long way improving the healthcare system in the country.
Again, you cited Princess Alice Hospital and Princess Royal in Carriacou. Princess Alice, of course, being in Maribor. Can we and should we be doing more with those, again, to ease the burden?
Of course, but you have to have the staff. You have to have the equipment, and you have to maintain a system. I think that's our challenges.
But we have invested significantly, certainly in physicians, over the years. And you mentioned earlier the asking for assistance, at St. George's University. Why aren't we seeing more of those Grenadians on the ground? And why, as Grenada, we are complaining that we don't have the staff, whether it's General Hospital, Princess Alice, or Princess Royal?
Well, remember, one of the mistakes that were made in question of the scholarship and training we gave them, we didn't bond people appropriately to ensure that they give us service. And I believe that we lost a lot of the people that were trained. Some never made a one-day service to the country, and I think it's a serious mistake. In fact, that's what led us in the final part of our government to say, look, now we have to put that system in place, because we're depending on people's understanding that they should make a contribution. We can't depend on that, and so on. So I think you're right that we should have been far ahead. When you look, Colin, when I travel abroad and I go to different parts of the United States, Europe, and we meet the doctor from studying Grenada, this Grenadian doctor here, this Grenadian surgeon. And I say, my God, you mean we providing top-class health service with the skills of our Grenadian professionals abroad, and we are empty in Grenada.
And how do you propose that we adjust this? I mean, I know the bonding or at least the enforcement of the bonds. Would you commit to that?
Yes, I think clearly the question of emolument clearly is a factor, and don't forget the structure and of course operations of the hospital in terms of the atmosphere. That clearly has to do. There's some serious work that has to be done there.
Okay, and I think what we say for doctors goes for our nurses as well, because we have to zoom down from UK and others and just soup up some of the best.
It's a sad thing.
Okay. The other aspect of healthcare I want to address is almost 15 years, certainly over 10 years. We've been a national conversation about national health insurance, and there still is none. What, from your recollection, was some of the challenges why it did not take place under your tenure, 2013 to 2022? And again, what type of advice would you give to ensure that we deliver? Because access to healthcare, you must be able to pay. Money must come from someplace.
Yes, I think it's important. National health insurance is very important. It's something I would certainly support, and we have initiated in government. But I think there are challenges, of course, the cost factor, as the question of payment from not just government but individuals would be a major factor. And we got to get buy-in from the trade union movement, because they're workers, they represent workers, and I think it's important to have them on board in going forward. So I think that's where the task has to be, the question of how we get stakeholders into this whole planning process so that we can go forward together, because there are controversial aspects to it, and the only how you'll be able to deal with it politically and otherwise is if you get buy-in from all concerned.
Mm-hmm. Just before I move off of healthcare, I want to just touch on rehabilitation, and I'll touch on it on two standpoints and get your comments. One is that we lost Carlton Home decades ago, and there isn't a facility that deals with that addiction problem. And the other one is one of the mental health, and I'm not necessarily speaking of people being warded, but just an acceptance of the challenges that the country faces and the citizens face with mental health issues.
Well, clearly, I think there need to be that's an area we fell short. We have to accept that. The Carlton Home needs to be rebuilt, and of course, not just the building, I'm talking about the services given, because we'll always have serious problem to deal with in that area. Yes, some of the services are being provided in different capacity, but I think a home designated for primarily this aspect of health should be a priority going forward. I think the question of mental health, we know in any society there'll always be challenges as far as the human factor is concerned, whether it's personal problems, whether it's financial problems, whether it's other types of problems. People do find themselves in great difficulties, and sometimes the support system to help them to deal with the problems that they're having as far as the mental health is concerned is crucial. And that clearly is an area. I am not sure that when we designate a facility and we call it, we call it the crazy house. I think sometimes our own way we define things and call things can be a problem, because the fact is any one of us can get sick at any given time, and we have to prepare ourselves accordingly, and therefore we have a responsibility to do what we can to get more trained people, psychologists and others, who can be able to examine and help those persons who find themselves in difficulty.
Moving forward, do you see yourself and your party taking on a leadership role in reducing the stigma attached to mental health problems, as well as allowing us as a nation to embrace that this is an illness like every other? If somebody gets a cut, you're going to send them to the surgery to get it dressed, etc. And likewise, this should be addressed, and there should be a national thrust to reduce the stigmatization.
Well, any initiative in that area will definitely get our support. The government they have a fundamental responsibility to lead in the process, and our party will never reject any initiative to be able to provide support in that area, because as I always point out, when issues like that are being dealt with, we have no choice but to be involved, because any one of us could find ourselves in that position. And not just mental health, in other situations. There should be national consensus and a relationship and issues of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's just about coming about time for our second break. So here's what we'll do. We'll take a break. We have lots more to discuss, and we'll be right back.
On February 3rd and 4th, the Grenada Motor Club presents Grenada's 50th Independence Invitational Drags at Pearls International Speedway, St. Andrews. Come out to see our local boys compete against the fastest drag racing cars the Caribbean has to offer. There will be special entertainment from one of the Caribbean's top drifters and live performances from one of our local artists. February 2nd is the welcome party at Lavo Lanes. February 3rd, test and tune at Pearls International Speedway. And February 4th, drag race finals. Contact us at Grenada Motor Club 473@gmail.com. Grenada's 50th Independence Invitational Drags, February 3rd and 4th at Pearls International Speedway. This will be an epic one.
Get ready to mark a historic milestone. It's the 50th anniversary of Independence Gala Cocktail and Dance, Saturday, 3rd February 2024 at the Crown Ballroom Radisson, starting at 7 p.m. for the all-inclusive cost of $500. All proceeds go towards the restoration of Government House. Secure your tickets now and be a part of history. Be there at the Radisson on February 3rd, 2024, hosted by Governor General Dame Cecile Lagranade.
Tickets available at Grenadian Optical, Melville Street and Grand Anse, the 50th Anniversary Independence Committee Secretariat on the Carenage, and online at gotofet.com. Yes, we have rebranded and we are now called Bee's Crispy Chicken, serving you with authentic, well-seasoned fried chicken using our own secret recipe. Unlike Tom Jones and Uncle Sam, we use a blend of local herbs and spices to give you, our valued customers, delicious fried and grilled chicken at affordable prices. Our menu includes chicken and chips, wraps, salads, hamburgers, chicken burgers, fried and grilled fish, your favorite ice cream flavors, and much, much more. You can find us at XL Plaza Grand Anse and our 2 express outlets at Granby Street St. George's and Jubilee Street St. Andrew. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Order online via Yogo or call 403-8003 to order in advance. Bee's Crispy Chicken. For us, by us.
Good. Well, welcome back, viewers. Leader of His Majesty's opposition, Dr. Keith Mitchell, is with us. And let's go some rapid fire now because, we're coming down on the final stretch. So, education. We observed free tuition for TAMCC and NULO, and also a conversation of education being mandatory to age 18. What are your thoughts?
Let me say this. I've been, the former NDC government in 2008 talked about free education, free tuition for everybody. Now, let me make this point. As far as I'm concerned, education is basically free already in this country. In my view, if the country has enough resources and can afford it, you give everybody free books, free tuition, free everything. We are not in that position. And I'm saying, given the fact that we are not in that position, those of us who can afford to pay, I think we have a fundamental responsibility to pay. I said that then some members of my own party didn't like it because they thought people take it negatively. I said sometimes you have to say what is right and truthful and so on. Because what is happening, there are a number of students whose parents are not able to give them the resources to pay transportation. Now, you don't provide transportation. You don't help the family to get work. they're not working, so they can't send their kids to school. They can't give them the lunch and the different things they need. They can't buy the clothes that they need to. So I said, so you don't do that, but you give people like my son free tuition, free books. Unacceptable. I don't need it, and others need other services, and I believe that's where the government should spend its resources. So I'm not a proponent of free tuition for everybody on the condition that we now exist, where in some cases people can't even send their kids to school.
Okay.
Spend the additional resources. So who needs help? Government has to have a responsibility to provide support for all students who cannot pay tuition. And that's not difficult. We have the studies and the barometers that we can use to measure that. So I don't think that's a problem.
Government speaks to expanding TVET programs to primary schools and making an investment there. What's your thoughts?
No, if this could be work and the system is in place, and no, if you could do that at that level, all power out. I might support. My only problem, as I said to Colin, sometimes you hear big plans. When you look for the implementation is not there. And sometimes you raise people's hopes, and then it dashed, and then you get licks because you make a promise. It's like this permanent for everybody. This thing that says all Imanis will make permanent. And so these things, when you make statements that you better deliver it, we buy 2 planes to send to transport people abroad. We're going to build a new hospital. These things you have to be careful. Statements that you make, particularly from the national leadership mouth, you have to be careful. If it does not come, you're going to take a lot of licks.
Okay. So you better deliver is what it is.
You better deliver. So good idea, but I want to see the implementation.
Speaking of delivery, it's been more than 10 years that Grenada gave the 3rd largest land grant to your alma mater, University of the West Indies, in Hope, and there is still nothing. Speak to it. Why haven't we seen development in Hope? And as you project, and I know that you have had very good conversations and you're very close to Vice Chancellor and former Principal Barito, so I know that you have the connections.
Yeah,
why haven't we seen anything? And as you project, what would you like to see there?
Well, I think Grenada has done its share, what we were asked to do. And I remember we had owed the university a lot of money. And governments before, including NNP, did not meet their responsibility, and we didn't have the finances to do so. So we made substantial contribution in terms of the debt to reduce it considerably so that because we were told finance is a problem. The land was made available, and it appears that the university, the decisions that were made, may not have given it the priority that it deserves. I have to say so, because I see other things were done. So for me to come here and say they just don't have the money or the resources, I don't think I would be telling the truth to myself. I believe that I believe the university has some explanation to give on this matter. That's my view.
If we are to turn, we see now, I'm going to move to agriculture in the interest of time. So we see, one, the abolition, I would say, of MNIB and the promise of a new look, Marketing and National Importing Board. I think you led the spotlight, or shining the spotlight on the dysfunctionality that was taking place within MNIB.
I wouldn't hide.
So just some thoughts on how things are unfolding now and what your expectations and wishes are.
Again, the greenness of the Prime Minister is part of our problem there. The Prime Minister's first statement, as soon as he got into office, without taking a good look at the situation, first statement was he would get rid of, close on the marketing board.
Right.
To me, right away, I think you have to work with the people who are working there.
Right.
And you have to work with the farmers and so on. What should have been done is the level of consultation and so on going forward. So I think there's no doubt some of the things that were going on in the marketing board was unacceptable, and there needed to be radical changes.
Right.
In fact, we had given a mandate to the new chairperson, Badiali, and others to do what is necessary. Not enough of that was done. So I understand the government challenge, but to just say close down or to just dismantle, and you have nothing left, nothing in place. So you hear the cries of the farmers, you hear people talking, and you hear plans. But as I said earlier on, this government is very good at a lot of words, a lot of plans, but you can't see. This is almost 2 years in government, you know. And we have not seen anything concrete in terms of policy decision or implementation of any serious action to change the status quo, to transform, as they were saying.
Let's go the cry of the farmers. Yes. They complain about the cost of inputs, and coming out of, I'm not going to call there's one provider that has been singled out, and we know it well. What has brought about that challenge for this monopoly organization and the challenges that farmers continue to face with the cost of inputs in general, whether we're looking at the poultry situation and we still import over 80% of the chickens, or we're looking at other inputs in farming in general?
Well, I think the first thing, the priority, the government has a responsibility to assess what is happening there and whether, in fact, unnecessary profits are being made on basic commodities like this. Government has a responsibility. I'm not here to say somebody's doing anything unfair, but the government has a responsibility to do that. Now, if and when that is done and you find out that there isn't unnecessary profit making in this, and the government knows that it has a responsibility to take some initiative to reduce costs. Colin, I would have loved to see, I see $15 million going for independence celebration, and I have a real problem with that. You got farmers bawling outside there. You got the ordinary workers who normally work on the road and get road work, and other people in several areas of the country that are suffering and have no work. They can't feed their families. And the government wants to spend $15 million. Take a few millions of that and help to subsidize activities in the farming sector, because we're talking food security. If the government does that, it will be far more beneficial to them and politically and the country as a whole.
Speaking of that, we seem to have had some tension over the debushing program and farm assistance program. Do you believe you could have done more under your leadership to grow farm assistance or have a better balance between the help that the farmers will need and the beautification of the country, which is necessary through the debushing program?
But we took a decision and we implemented. Part of the debushing program was helping the farmers. So in several parts of the country, gangs were working on farms, providing help to farmers, and so on. So we recognized that we needed to do something. So I think that's a program that should be reestablished. But you have to make a decision. Until, Colin, we have jobs for people at that level, the debushing program is necessary. I mean, I have no doubt, had NMP been in office in 2023, you have seen a much more robust Christmas activities than you see. Because the minute I heard the government was not investing in the massive road program, you go to Barbados, you see it. You go to St. Vincent, you see it. The minute I heard that, I said they lack an understanding and appreciation of how an economy works at the level of the grassroots level in the country. The people who spend money in the shops are not people like me. We might spend a few dollars, not us. The ordinary man, when he gets $1, he goes to the store, he goes to the fish market, he goes to the market, he goes to buy stuff in different places. He is the one that helps money to be circulated. The minute he doesn't have a job.
Let's talk circulation, because I just want to branch into this. Government took a decision to pay public officers twice monthly. Today is the 15th of January. Normally we complain January is the hardest month, is the longest month. Payday was today. How do you respond to that move, and do you believe it has been a good move by the government?
Well, I don't know. You see, I mentioned a while ago to you, honestly, we started studied the necessity for doing this and realized that it would be more problems than it solves. Do you know a lot of people are not getting paid right in the system right now on time? That's a fact. People are reporting that. In fact, one case, a person, a high official within the government's office did not get paid, had to complain. So I'm saying that I cannot say, I do not believe that the government can say it is a success story to pay people every 15 days. I cannot say. If they say so, they have no data. These are just language, but no data to show that. And I honestly believe that some serious analysis need to be done on this. Because what has happened? Why it is that at the end of the month where you normally used to see activities, you're not seeing nothing like that. Colin, you drive through the lands now. You know the lands was most time when you're going up to Sauters and you pass through Guave, you almost have to take the by road because there's always massive activities. Now you can drive through any time on the lands in St. John's. So it is clear something is happening, and I would not be surprised if a proper analysis is done and it showed that this paying every 15 days could be part of the problem. I'm not here to say. I have no data to support this, but that's why I said a serious study needs to be done on this matter.
Okay. Just speaking of, again, brass tacks issue and dollars, the pension issue of public officers, this was something that has been pending since 1984 when government of Grenada lost the first court case. It took this new administration to do it.
That's not true.
Okay, so correct the record.
We were paying pension, but we had a formula. Don't forget how we are doing it. So the people who are retiring were being paid. In fact, some people, based on the present system, might have to pay back some money. Now, what we said was, if you go and just pay all that resources to one group of persons, you're going to have a problem. So we need negotiations with the trade union to see how we can manage the process. The government has now come to what we were saying. We set up a committee. They went and they paid some people lump sum, and they were saying you're going to see a spin-off in the economy. But my friend, nobody knows where that money went. 70-something million, almost $80 million was spent. So I think it was a politically motivated decision, and I think fundamentally, economically, was not right.
Should it have been addressed, though, earlier by previous administrations?
Well, we could always Monday morning quarterback on that. That's something we can always agree, and I don't see a problem in agreeing with this. The fact is, when the issue became a serious issue, we were analyzing it. We set up teams, we were looking at it, and we concluded that if we just went and just do it, some people are being told now, if they retire now, they're not going to get payment now because the situation financially would not be there. So they don't want to, they're not taking requests for retirement as far as benefits are concerned at this particular time. We were saying that you're going to have serious problems. And let's face it, Colin, if you limit, we don't have money flowing in Grenada's water, and therefore you have limited resources. Therefore, each sector of the society, the farmers would need help, the fishermen would need help, the ordinary persons who are looking for a day work on the road or other places would need help, the education system need more investment, the healthcare system. You take one money and just pay one group of persons one time instead of placing it over a period of time. I am not saying I am happy for those who get the money, but I'm saying if it resulted in many other colleagues are not able to get their share, then I say that's a fundamental mistake.
Let me come to something that is close to your heart but aching mine. So I'm going to talk cricket, close to your heart. The aching mine is that we have that 16,000-seater cricket stadium that is about to undergo refurbishment in 2024, and we did not have lights. I know you love cricket.
Yes.
How did we come here where we now have to look for additional sums to put lights into the stadium? And I'm also aware that in the last few years it's been in the budget, but did not happen. And what may have caused
the negotiation process fell down each time because, of course, the Ministry of Sports were responsible for the negotiations, and the provider who made that commitment, and each time there were serious problems. And I mean, I lament that myself. I think it's an area I certainly would have loved to see lights in the city. I mean, given my passion for cricket and the fact that I believe with the changing ways in which people live, society is changing all the time. People would love to come to a game 4 o'clock and go home at 8, 9 in the night and so on. So it would help bring the crowds back more to cricket than we have had. So yes, I lament that fact. It's not a proud area for us, certainly. But let's face it, Colin, we didn't need to have light. You have a T20 World Cup and we didn't have a game. The government today did not even submit a request. Look, right now I'm chairing a committee on the board of stakeholders for West Indies cricket. So I'm in touch with the president and key members. And the government must know that I have tremendous contact with all the players. Anytime something happens, they call me, and they do still. The contact with the boards, the contact with the Cricket Association. How could we have a 2020 World Cup? Games going in Florida, in Texas, and we don't get a game? Something is fundamentally wrong.
Is that committed to the no lights as well?
No. Many of the games are paid in it. Don't forget T20. You don't think you can start a game at 2 o'clock and finish at 5.
Yeah, I know in terms of the finishing, but is it the most convenient time?
No, they did not bid.
Right.
If you don't bid, remember we bid in the first World Cup and we competed with Barbados and the Giants and got a lot of games. You remember that very well. And we didn't have lights. But there are many games that are played during the day, and some games are played in day night and so on. So they cannot use this. If you did not bid at all, then that's a fundamental problem. It shows the weakness in what existed then at the Ministry of Sports.
Okay. What's your take on the situation of violence in Grenada, and particularly gun violence, and some of your recommendations to tackling it? Because I know you've raised it and you believe it's a problematic issue.
Colin, over the years, being in government, we have had problems. It's not the first time there are problems. Maybe the extent of it may be a difficult one indeed. But each time we got people involved. And the Prime Minister and Minister of National Security took responsibility and brought people together and came up with solutions. The churches, the business community, and the opposition, everybody involved. And we took decisions to deal with the problem. I sit down and I listen to President, Prime Minister is basically saying there are a lot of guns being imported and therefore we should expect that. That cannot be the position of somebody responsible for protecting the safety of the country. It worries me, Colin. And especially now, as I told you at the beginning of the program, someone called me this evening and said, are you aware that the ISIS organization is registered in Grenada? I said, no. ISIS, as you mean? ISIS? They said, yes. And I said, you sure you know what you're saying? And I walked out and I talked to a number of people, and they said, yes, they've heard that. Well, I am saying to the government, if that rumor is out there, please deal with it urgently, because I would not want to live in a country where the organization called ISIS has any influence whatsoever. And I think if it's not true, that needs to be dealt with urgently. And if it's true, something has to be done, because ISIS is banned in almost every country in the Caribbean and around the world. So I wonder how we could come, and what I understood, the registration of that ISIS organization was done between September and November 2023. This is the information. If it's not true, I think I am doing a service to the government. Come out immediately and do something about this, because it's troubling to me. So I'm worried about the security of the country. The present government has to take full responsibility for the low morale in the police force right now. The movement of top members of the force and the bringing in of retired people. And in one particular case, someone who was in the police force who had no relationship with the police officers. A man whom I considered looked like he doesn't even like himself, because he's always seemed to be vexed with the whole world. This is the person that is the advisor to the Minister of National Security. And I know when he was there before, the Tillman Thomas government lost serious political support among police officers. We benefited because of that individual. Now you walk into government, and this is the person you have rushing, advising the Prime Minister, who have no knowledge, experience in dealing with security matter in the country, and that worries me. And though you're seeing among the policemen leaving the force, that skilled policemen, top members, can't wait to leave. A lot only there because they need the resources. It's a frightening situation.
Is it fair, though, for you to make the comment that we see retirees returning to the force? Because under your leadership, you made similar decisions in some circumstances.
Oh, if I bring in a person to lead, but I won't bring up 3 and 4 persons to be in ordinary position in the service. No, I wouldn't do that. When I brought in Commissioner James, and I'm telling you, he's one of the best commissioner of police this country has ever seen. So that was an absolutely perfect decision that I made, and so on. So I at the top level of the service, I brought in Beryl Isaac into the service because of her years of experience. Beryl Isaac, like your mother, and the people, those permanent secretaries of those areas. When I came in the service, Colin, the people like your mother that helped made me what I am as a public servant, serving as a minister, because they had experience. And these people were able to take those of us as young ministers and provide guidance and support. Marjorie Dowe. So I brought in Beryl Isaac, and I must tell you, it was a decision that I made, I think was the right one. And so I'm talking about bringing a bunch of persons at different levels in the police force, not commissioner, that now at different levels, when you have people who have been producing, who have done well in terms of the evaluation, and you shift them around and you move them around, no, I think what you have done is damaging your relationship with the police officers, and by implication you're creating problems for yourself as the government, and by implication the country as a whole. Security is fundamental. Nothing must be done. And I'm making this call because we all live in this country. Anything happens, all of us face the consequences. So I believe the Prime Minister needs to realize he's the Minister of National Security. He needs to get hold of this thing now, because the last time I heard gun going off in this country openly during the day in a place was in 1985-86, when the revolution had just ended. And I remember how much work we put into seeing that was dealt with. And if someone, a group, is doing that openly now, it tells you that somehow the perception is that we are losing a grip on security in this country, and that must worry me.
Okay.
And hopefully it's worrying the Prime Minister too.
Okay. Let me just switch a little bit back to the economy somewhat. The Port of St. George. And over the years, there have been several recommendations as to how efficiencies can be improved at the port. There have been reports that have been done by the CDB and others. Just your thoughts and how any recommendations as to how we can address it. I mean, the reports are not new, so it's a lingering problem. So some of the challenges with improving efficiencies at the port, treatment of workers on the docks, etc.
Well, I think clearly the first thing has to be the personnel that you have in the responsible position. That clearly have to be an area that needs to look at. That clearly the facilities, also how the atmosphere in which people work clearly would show that you care. I think that's another factor. I think the problem has been over the years, and I think Colin, has been said, that they were looking at moving the port outside of St. George's. And at one time there were studies done. They looked at Perseverance at one time, and then also Boucherjou was in that, somewhere in the south was another area. And there were serious decisions being looked at to move that. I think the government needs to have a look at this, and to because I think in the St. George's the space is very limited, as you know. And as the country expands economically and so on, you would expect to see more activity at the port. So I think looking at the personnel, looking at training for officers in the system, also looking at the facilities there. I remember one time going to the port and a certain building, and we were there and rain was falling and wetting people, and I said, but I left there and I said, I got the Ministry of Works and said, no, we can't have people working in those conditions. So sometimes you can't necessarily blame the government of the day specifically for something. Sometimes information do not reach them, and sometimes people have a responsibility. Those who are in the position of serving the government must be able to report basic and fundamental weakness in the system. And if they do that and the government does not move, and the government must get the blame.
Okay. It's coming close to wrap up time. So basically it's two questions in closing, and you can answer them in any order. One will be national, the other personal. So as we are on the cusp of celebrating our 50th year as an independent state, I would like you to make a wish for Grenada over the next 50. So it's futuristic. But I'd also like you to do another reflection on yourself and share with us what you believe. If you were to stop today, what is the Keith Mitchell legacy?
First part was what again?
Your wish for Grenada for the next 50.
Well, no, I certainly hope as a nation that we can work closer together, and there must be more unity. And I'm not just talking about the phrase and just saying we'll unite. I'll give you a fundamental example. The government has independence celebration. It said it's independence. You have an opposition. And you say there are things that the government as a team is doing because you have a celebration committee. Not a word has been said to me about the services of going in constituencies. But individuals that didn't even get 20% of the votes is the one going out in the constituency. And it happens in every other constituency that we are representing. You don't show respect for the governance of the country. And you're telling me, let's unite? Unite with what? How can you have a system like this and the leader of the opposition not even consulted? Do you know the present Prime Minister has never asked me a simple question since he got into office? That's okay with me, but I'm just pointing out the problem he has as an individual. I cannot say that about the previous NDC government. Tillman Thomas would call me on matters, or his secretary would call me, or the cabinet secretary. None of them. I don't want to call, but I'm making a point. You can't just talking lip service about unity. Unite with what? Something that behaves as if they are Lord Almighty and they don't have to talk to anybody? No, it doesn't work so. When I speak like this, Colin, I'm not afraid to speak like this because it's just factual. I have never been in government to see a more aloof government, particularly leadership, from what is supposed to be something basic relationships. I've never seen it. And that is going to work to the demise of that particular government.
Your
wish is simply we need some serious unity in this country. And I will always work for unity. When I leave this position as political leader and an active role in politics, I would always work. And I would work to unite, hopefully, whoever is in government and opposition to see how I can bring the persons together. But because you are in a position of opposition, you're always seen as part of the partisanship. So I would hope to play a bigger role in that respect. And the other
legacy.
No, my legacy, as I point out to you, I feel that I left a very lucrative life in the United States as a professor and, of course, a consultant, making lots of money. Came here, made little or nothing. I have less asset today than I had when I came here in Grenada, but I am a proud person and happy person for the service. I feel that I have made contribution. I have not been perfect. There's some people who would always have difficulty with me as an individual, but that's life. But I feel that I feel satisfied that I have contributed and will continue to contribute to the development of my country as a whole. And I hope and pray, Colin, that one thing people would say about Keith Mitchell, that despite what differences they had, I would never see them as an enemy. In fact, some of the problems I've had with my own political parties, when I engage certain people who are viciously criticizing me and others, they ask me, how could you talk to this man? How could you? I said, no, you have to move forward, not backwards. And I believe that philosophy of engaging people, Colin, I got this from my mother. I've seen people say the worst things about her, and the first thing when that person gets sick, she's the first person, and I used to wonder, what happened to this lady? And I believe that must have come from watching my own parents, how they treat people and so on. And I believe that is the best approach to life. So I hope and pray that people see me as someone who's willing to accept his mistakes, his weaknesses, and not afraid to admit them and to correct them accordingly. I am proud of that. And I always repeat the story, and finally I want to give that story before I depart. That is something I would never forget. When I just walked into government, came into government in 1995, I had a real problem with the public service. They didn't expect me to win. So I had a real problem. And the truth, in local cricket language, I made a whoop. I sent about 4 or 5 public servants home, I thought. And after looking at it and reflecting, some people came to me from different organizations and pointed out that the mistakes I had made, a few of them. And I called them in and apologized. Those I felt that I did wrong to. But I said to them, I will not it was a public decision. So I said, the next time there's Thanksgiving service in October, I'm going to use the opportunity, and I used the opportunity to ask for forgiveness from those persons. I felt proud. You know, when you do something like that, Colin, it's like a weight come out of your stomach, and I felt proud of myself. And you know, at least one of those persons turned to be one of my best friends. In fact, she served as my cabinet secretary afterwards. I gave away one. I wouldn't give away the So I'm just making the point. I believe that we all are human beings. We all have Grenadians. We want to see the best for our country. And our job is to learn. Yes, you're going to have differences, and sometimes you cuss each other off and so on, but don't let that linger. Let's move on the path of uniting our country and building a society together.
Dr. Keith Claudius Mitchell, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on our program Beyond the Headlines this evening. Best wishes for 2024 and moving forward as you carve out your own course in your political life and personal life.
Well, Colin, every time I see you, I see the old man. So, I was a good friend, so I'm so happy to be here. And I must say, this was an enjoyable session for me.
Excellent.
Thank you for hosting me.
Thank you. Our pleasure. And to you, the viewers, thank you so very much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure and an honor having you share the last 97 minutes or so with us. Have yourselves a wonderful evening. Take good care of yourselves and each other. See you again in 6 days.